Hey, everybody. Welcome to the first edition of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, where we're not going to be talking specifically about my teams in the offseason. It's offseason show number 4. You can scratch one more mark on your prison cell wall. We're hashing it out. Tomorrow, we get to do a diagonal line, so that's exciting. I'm on Twitter at Dan Vespris. Old Man Squad is the network feed on Twitter. It's also my handle on Blue Sky if you've migrated over there for whatever reason. People got all my case. I'm trying to be on a bunch of spots. I'm not doing social media to make a point. I'm doing social media to reach you guys. People always got to yell about something. Today, we are going to start our lessons learned series. Now, admittedly, we kind of did that to some degree, at least, with the results from my 10 cash Yahoo leagues. We looked at the ones that I won, what we could take away from those. We looked at the ones where I did okay and the ones where I lost. And now we're going to segue into this series of episodes that's basically kind of honing in on what the biggest takeaways were from all of that. Because the last 3 shows, and all of our offseason shows are a meandering mess, but the last 3 shows in particular, we meandered. We looked through the teams. We found stuff as we went. Today, tomorrow, whatever, it'll do a few shows like this. We're just going to pick a key topic, and we're going to break that one down. And on today's show, we're going to be looking at the first round. Not the upcoming first round, and not even necessarily the first round that just was, although that's going to be kind of our starting point for it. But what does it mean for your fantasy team, and why does it get talked into oblivion? And we're going to do it leading up to draft season. And the answer is because it is, without fail, the most critical pick you will make in your fantasy draft. You're sitting there for an hour and a half, and the most important thing you do happens most likely in the first 4 minutes. Our good buddy Josh Lloyd ran a bunch of tests talking about how many reversals you'd actually need to even out the difference between a team that gets first pick and a team that gets 12th pick. Yes, it's why the truest fantasy game would be an auction draft, but ain't nobody got time for that. I'm trying to do 8 to 15 leagues, and auction drafts take freaking 3 hours long. I can't do that. I got to be able to slip in a Yahoo midday draft over a lunch break. You can knock those bad boys out in about 45 minutes these days. So they got a 1-minute timer. It's only 13 rounds. People are zipping through those things. If you don't have time for an auction draft, which is, I think, the vast majority of us, how do we deal with getting a later round pick? How do we build a team on any first round pick? And to look at that, we're going to start by pulling up the pre-rank tracker. You guys might remember this. It was part of my, it is part of my Google Sheet from this past draft season. You can see all the tabs at the bottom if you're watching with us on YouTube. And I mean, it's relatively straightforward here. I tracked Yahoo's pre-ranks anytime they made adjustments to it. They had one that came out on August 8th. That was the very first Yahoo board. They updated on August 27th. Then they had a nice long stretch where they sat back in the recliner and just let things develop. Updated on October 2nd. October 17th was the update before the season started, and then they do one basically on opening night, but I didn't bother to write that down because I don't care about you if you did your draft on opening night or later. That's a silly time to do it. You must do your draft in time to get all 82 games. Baseball's different because they had the Tokyo series that happened, a week and a half before the season started. Basketball, do your draft before the season starts. Okay, we can move on from that. The pre-ranks, or the final ones this past year, are the ones we can probably work off of. But first, guys, I know you're getting whiplash right now, but we are back as of today with Bet Online. They had a little bit of a battle. We're going neck and neck, odds head to head here. We had a different partner through March Madness and the Masters, but we're back with Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season. Yeah, that's right. I've been prepping you for this. It's in full swing. Everybody loves the in full swing. baseball pun. And we are into the home stretch for NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, and BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the action is going on in front of you. BetOnline has the largest selection of odds on everything, as we just mentioned, baseball, hockey, basketball, UFC, and that is why it remains your number one online source for all sports wagering info. Hey, and in between games, roll on down to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino action. BetOnline, our partner once again. The game starts here. It's cool to have you back, BetOnline. It's been too long, All-Stars. So you could look at all 4 updates of this Yahoo board if you really wanted to. I don't think that it matters a ton for our purposes. You can see that of the players in the first round, the guys that had sort of the biggest swings were James Harden, who started at 25 and ended up at 10. Joel Embiid, who started at 9, got as high as 5 before they revealed that his knee was still a disheveled mess, and then fell back to number 12. Otherwise, it was mostly just guys that started in the first round that were sort of flexing around within the first round. Outside of the top 4, they did not change for 2.5 straight months. It went Wemby, Jokic, Doncic, and Shea. That was the top 4 on the Yahoo board from day 1 to day whatever the hell it was. Otherwise, Anthony Davis, Tyrese Halliburton, Giannis for your punt teams, Jason Tatum, Trae Young, and basically Anthony Edwards, although you could sort of mush him in with like a Steph Curry, who was also right around the edge of the turn in the first round. And I know, or what I'm assuming you're thinking, which is what I'm thinking as I read through those names, is things could go a lot of different directions with that first round pick. So let's start by looking at the top 4. Wemby, Jokic, Doncic, and Shea. How did those turn out? Well, Wemby only played 46 games before a blood clot ended his season early, so that was rough. Shea played 76 and ran away with a totals victory this year. Jokic, who had maybe the most impressive fantasy season ever, missed kind of for the first time almost in his career a dozen games, and he was a pretty clear number 2. And then Luka missed 32 games, and so his totals number was also pretty far down the board. Wemby, by the way, by totals was number 15. Luka, where the hell was Luka? I've lost him. My eyes. Number 62. He's way down the board. By the way, that highlights the insane difference between Luka, who was number 7 per game, missing 32 games, and Wemby, who was number 3 per game, missing 36 games. And Wemby was a solid 3.5, 4 rounds better by totals. And that gets us to another point that I'm definitely going to forget that I was going to make. So let's just do that now. The top guys, and this year it was Jokic, was way out in front of everybody. And then Shea and Wemby were basically in a tie for second place. And then there was a drop-off pretty much the size of the value of the guy behind them. And so we're going to flip over now to the Basketball Monster player rank page, which is just a great way to look at like how value is actually calculated. Forget all this stuff off to the right and just look at player value. Our value for this player. This is Basketball Monster. They're computing basically what this player is worth in one roster slot to be able to get that many stats out of one slot. Nikola Jokic is listed as a 1.2. You don't really need to understand what that means other than to note that like a league average fantasy play, which is round picks or like the 70th ranked guy, is basically he's a player value of 0. He doesn't have a significant impact, positive or negative. It's good to have, but it's not going to dramatically change things. And then Jokic is up at 1.2, which is crazy. So again, this is just sort of a computation of overall value. Shea was at 1.03. Victor, both those guys were right around 1. Anthony Davis at 0.6, which is effectively saying, for our purposes, and this is fuzzy mathing it a decent amount, that Anthony Davis was about half as valuable as Nikola Jokic. Now, you can't use that for all, like, because Jokic isn't 4 times as valuable as James Harden, but to some degree, he kind of is. But, like, you can't say Jokic was, a player like Miles Bridges, you can't say Jokic was infinitely more valuable. There has to be some way of comparing these guys, And you can just look at the different stats and say, okay, well, this is where one guy has an advantage over the other. But for our purposes, just to highlight this discussion, the gap in player value between Victor Wembanyama and Anthony Davis was effectively like getting a bonus late first, early second round pick. So then that drags us back to the discussion we were having before, which is how on earth do you cover that up? If you have the 12th pick in your draft and you're debating between James Harden and Steph Curry and Anthony Edwards and sadly Joel Embiid or whatever second rounder you might be looking at, how do you cover up the difference between someone who just landed Nikola Jokic to start the league? The answer, unfortunately, is you kind of can't. But if you get a little bit deeper into the weeds on this, the answer becomes totals. Which brings us back to, I think, maybe the top lesson learned from looking at my fantasy teams that struggled. Because you could see the ones that won. The teams that won first place, my first round picks in those were Tyrese Halliburton, Nikola Jokic, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think I had 3 first place finishes, right? If I'm looking back at what we went through. Yeah. What do all those guys have in common? Again, we're talking Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Tyrese Halliburton. First of all, Jokic and Shai, those are numbers 1 and 2 per game. But also by totals, those guys were 1 and 2. Do you know who number 3 was by totals? Tyrese Halliburton. It's not a coincidence that the league where I was able to get first place, where I didn't have one of the first picks, is the league where I had the guy who had the 3rd best rank by totals this year. By the way, the team that had Nikola Jokic, I also traded for Tyrese Halliburton, so that team did okay. That was the one, though, that had to make a blitz and 3-pointers at the end. There is one other team in that league that was really, really, really good, and sometimes you're going to have that kind of thing. Roto head-to-head, whatever. So that, unfortunately, and I know, like, there's been, and I'm part of it, by the way. This is not me trying to say that someone else is leading you astray. There's been, I think, a push in recent years to focus almost exclusively on per game value. But if you guys remember, thinking back all the way to draft season, what was my rule? My rule was totals matter up to a point based on league type. If you're in a roto league where you have a games cap, and so you only need to get 82, and some of my roto leagues, as the commission, I'll crank it up to 85 to make the benches a little bit more important. But like using Yahoo's public settings, you need to get 82 games played out of each of your 10 starting roster slots. So if you have a guy that plays 68 games, you use 14 bench games to fill in that extra. That's not that tough. Somebody on your bench is going to play 14 games, or you're just going to pick somebody up. Easy peasy. So for those leagues, for roto leagues, you can focus on totals for a shorter span of time. Meaning, by like, we'll get around to this. In head-to-head leagues, where you don't have a games cap and every 0 is like getting kicked in the nards, you need totals. As much as it pains me to admit it, you need them for a while on draft night. You can build a pretty damn good head-to-head team by getting the guys who play in 75 games. And some good examples of this are, again, if you're looking at the overall rank of players, the per-game first-round board from this year does not have that many parallels with the totals first-round board from this year. The parallels are Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Nikola Jokic, Tyrese Halliburton. That's it. Wait, Steph Curry. Steph. 4? Am I getting that right? Cat. Sorry, 5. Only 5 of the 7 per game first rounders are there by totals. The other 7 totals names on the board were guys that were outside the first round and jumped into it by playing. I know it sounds insane, but it's the truth. Anthony Davis, per game totals guy, or per game first round guy, totals, nope. Wemby, nope. Now, that was a hard one to see coming, but whatever. Luka, finals hangover year, nope, by totals. Dame seemed like he was on his way there until he had a blood clot. By the way, news just broke while we're on air that Dame just got cleared for game 1 of the playoffs. That's crazy. On Saturday, he had that DVT diagnosis like a month ago. I really hope they're not doing something stupid. We'll trust the doctors on this one. Tyrese Maxey, per game, yes. Totals, nope. Kevin Durant, per game, yes. Totals, nope. Kyrie Irving, per game, yes. Totals, nope. Honorable mention goes to Jason Tatum, who was number 13 per game, played in 72 games, and so he was, in fact, in there by totals. Same with Dyson Daniels and James Harden. So there were some names that were just outside the first round that jumped into it. Anthony Edwards, James Harden, Dyson Daniels, Jason Tatum. Those guys were second rounders that jumped into the first round. Vooch, also a second rounder that jumped into the first round. Names that I did not mention yet: Josh Hart, number 12 by totals. Ivica Zubac, number 9 by totals. And it doesn't just come down to the first round, but it is incredibly important. The way you catch a team that gets that top 1, 2, or 3 picks is, for one, like, you were going to have a tough time catching Shea if that team did even a half decent job drafting the rest of their team. Same story for Nikola Jokic. Like, those two teams are going to be in the top tier of your fantasy league because they not only were at the top of the board per game, they were also at the top of the board by totals. But you were able to catch Luka Doncic teams, Victor Wembanyama teams, because they missed ball games. And frankly, you were able to catch other guys drafted in the first round. If we go back to our previous discussion, Giannis, who, again, had his typically solid punt season. Yeah, and I mean, what was the games played number on Giannis? Giannis was 67 games played. Yeah, you could catch him. You could catch a Giannis team. You could catch a Trae Young team pretty easily, actually, because his per game numbers were terrible. You could catch a Joel Embiid team. Like, there are ways to cover up some of the mistakes in the middle, I guess, of the first round. But to me, this is the kind of coming back to the main point. I know my offseason shows are marked by being sidetracked by my own train of thought. Let's start with head-to-head, because the majority of you, that's the format you're playing. If you're in a head-to-head league, the way that you cover up a deficit in the first round, and you know what? This is sort of a double point. Not only is it a way that you can cover up a deficit in just luck, you got the 10th pick and your buddy got the 2nd pick. It's going to be tough to catch him. You do it by not screwing up your first 3 or 4 picks. That's sort of like I guess that's the topic sentence. But then all the stuff we've been talking about already is more, how do you not screw it up? You guys have watched me here talk a little bit in circles without getting to the crux of it. Draft safe early. You can extend this on the head-to-head side as far as you want. I think, personally, with head-to-head, you want to draft relatively safe for probably like the top 75 to 90 picks. So like 7 rounds of pretty safe drafting. Roto, probably 3 or 4 rounds because of that games cap. If you start screwing up picks in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th round, it doesn't really matter. Because in Roto, if you get some high per game, heavily injured dudes in rounds 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or whatever, and, we're going to get some sleepers. Like, we got them. We got plenty. We got Norman Powell. We got Cam Johnson. We got Dyson Daniels, who is just like the most insane value ever. We're going to get those guys late. So if you want to take some chances on like a Kawhi Leonard in the 5th round, I have no problem with that. who weirdly, for all the terrible totals numbers he put up this year, Kawhi Leonard was incredibly useful in head-to-head playoffs. That thing went completely ass backwards. The reason that I split it up like that is what we were talking about. You just can't afford to have zeros. But if you look at the Basketball Monster totals board, which again, that's right now you guys are looking at the per game board on YouTube. I'll flip it over to totals. You can see that there are very attainable, relatively durable dudes throughout the draft that if you pile them all together, you can end up with a bunch of guys ranked inside the top 50. There's a cutoff where it's no longer all that relevant. You know, a good example of that would be like a Tumani Kamara, who was pretty solid most of the year, but not great. He was number 54 by totals by just sort of plodding along near the top 100 the entire year. Keegan Murray is another good example. Keon Ellis was number 51 by totals this year, but that's just because he played in 81 ball games. That's not a guy that you really wanted to start every single day. Certainly not in a roto league and probably not in a head-to-head league because there were some obvious ups and downs that went with it. You can go deeper than that. Jalen Green was number 70. He was a punt play, but let's say you weren't punting. Not a guy that was a positive impact player every single day in a 9-category format, but by totals, he was a 6th rounder because he played in every single game, all 82. Here's a better example. Would you have played Tyus Jones all 81 games this year? Hell no. But he was number 76 because he played in 81 games this year. So there's a cutoff there where it goes from being sort of super relevant to a mirage. And to me, that cutoff is around top 50 by totals. So like, how does that correspond? It's those guys that are basically neutral fantasy impact players or better. If you can get an extremely durable top 75 guy, that is very useful. If you can get a super durable like top 115 guy, not that useful. I would rather have a less durable top 75 guy than a very durable top 115. And it's something that we've talked about, I think, a little bit in passing. But now that the season is over, the evidence is, I think, pretty overwhelming that that's the way you've got to at least start your teams. Look at the other guys in the second round that are there by totals. Jared Allen, who played in all 82. Brooke Lopez, Devin Booker, Derek White, JJJ, Tyler Hero, Evan Mobley, Bam Adebayo, OG Anunoby, Domantas Sabonis, LeBron James. A lot of these guys were going in the second round, but not all of them. Jared Allen was pretty regularly going near 60. And he is a second rounder by totals. JJJ was going near 40. Second rounder by totals. Derek White was going in the mid 40s. Brooke Lopez was going near 75 or 80. If you get these guys, Bam Adebayo, who I'll admit, I'm kind of down on Bam for the most part. He turned his season around last 2 months. But just like, what is he great at? Not a whole lot. But he's great at playing in games. He played in 79 out of 82 games. And we know going into the year, he's going to be one of those guys that's no one's 100% locked to be healthy, but some of these guys are much more likely than others. Domantas Sabonis missing 11 games was a devastating number. And so, like, that's a guy. You could take Sabonis in the second round and just be like, look, I'm comfortable with getting a second round guy in the second round. I'm comfortable getting a third round guy in the third round. That's fine. You don't have to get your third round. You don't have to get a first rounder in the third round. You have to not get a zero. You have to not get a clunker. You have to not get Joel Embiid. The extreme downside guys that can tank your team. And I believe that that's the case in both roto and head-to-head, where I think, and maybe I don't know if the world is split with me on this one. With roto, by about pick 40 is when you can start to get a little bit brazen. Go for those high upside guys who might miss some games. Head-to-head, not yet. Not yet. We'll go back and show you some of the pre-ranks on these dudes. So, like, who are the guys that were pre-ranked in the 4th round at the end? Bam Adebayo, Evan Mobley, Jimmy Butler, Desmond Bane, Paolo Banchero, Derek White, John Morant, Emmanuel Quickley, Miles Turner, Franz Wagner, Jaylen Brown, Kawhi Leonard. Who are the safe plays? You call them quote-unquote safe plays in there. Adebayo, Mobley, Bane, Derek White, I would think. Miles Turner. Those are probably your 5 safe guys. We didn't really know what to make of Franz Wagner. I wasn't a big fan of Jaylen Brown. John Morant, Paolo, those guys are kind of a different format, dude. Who are your not safe guys? Jimmy Butler, Kawhi Leonard. Those are the per game upside plays where you're just comfortable with the mess. And so you're not touching those guys in head-to-head. Head-to-head leagues, you should be looking at the 5 guys I listed as what you'd call safe plays. And if you want to go deeper down the board, sure. Pascal Siakam at 50, classic safe play. Siakam is super durable. He missed a very rare game this year. You know where he finished by totals? 35. You take him in the 4th round, that's a totals win. Yeah, he's not exciting, but it's a totals win. You know who else is in there? Where's Jalen Duren? Where did he finish his dang season? He was more healthy this year than expected. 45. Rudy Gobert, 48. DeMar DeRozan, 40. All these guys are clustered in there. All of them. You can see them on your board. Mikal Bridges, not a particularly impressive year, but played in all 82 games. It's something. 80, 90 range you play in every single game. That's still useful. Not game-changing, but useful. Vooch was also in there. Also extremely durable. And I thought this was going to be a down year for Vooch. Forget the fact that it wasn't a down year. He was great. He played 74 games again. It's just what he does. After you get outside, and again with head-to-head, I think it's like more around pick 75, then it's time to take shots. And because the board gets a little goofy at that point, what is even a safe play? You don't need to draft guys that are around the rank that they are. You just need to be looking for dudes that you think are going to play. It's like, don't take a guy who's injured in that range. Don't take a guy who's injury prone. You don't take a guy on a tanking team. That's a different discussion. We'll save that for another day. So if you had picked like 80, and let's say that the names that you're looking at here are guys that were pre-ranked 80 and beyond: Michael Porter Jr., Colin Sexton, Trey Murphy, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Keegan Murray, Kobe White, Mark Williams, CJ McCollum, Jonathan Kuminga. Like, there's some craptacular names in there. You're looking for the guy that you think is going to stay on their feet. And I know that he's super boring. Michael Porter Jr. actually probably would have been, I'm going to say, the best pick there, but certainly the safest. He played in 77 out of 82 games. He seems like he's put his injury stuff behind him. I think we're at a couple of years in a row where he's basically put his injury stuff behind him, right? I got to look that up to make sure I'm not mushing seasons together. How many games did MPJ play in last year? 81. So he's at 81 and 77. I know everybody's injured or healthy until they're not, and vice versa. But unless we hear some rumblings going into a season, it seems pretty fair to look at him and say, this guy's probably going to stay upright. Who else was in there that you knew was going to basically play? Sexton tanking team, Trey Murphy. I think did he come into the year hurt? Yeah, he came into the season hurt. Bogdanovic came into the year hurt. Keegan Murray was on a team that added DeMar DeRozan, but, healthy at least. Kobe White, healthy. I wasn't a giant Kobe White guy going into the season, but he played 75 games. That matters. After you get through that range, let's say you're now basically on your 8th, call it an 8th round pick. To me, that's where you start taking big swings in head-to-head. So Roto, more like 4th, 5th round, head-to-head, more like 8th round. And that covers you up in a lot of things. It covers you up against teams that have a higher pick than you in the 1st round. Because let's look at it this way. What if, hypothetically, the team in the 1st round that took Nikola Jokic thought, all right, I got Nikola Jokic, I can take a shot late in the 2nd round, and they went with, I don't know, is Kyrie Irving? Kyrie Irving would be considered kind of a shot, right? So Kyrie, Jokic, you got these 2 1st-round guys. They're sitting pretty until they're not. Kyrie finished at number 66 by totals with basically almost no, and this is Roto because we're looking at it kind of sort of the aggregate. Basically, he was a league average player by totals. He didn't have a big positive impact. He didn't also weigh your team down at all. He was just sort of right middle of the pack. So you got Jokic, who was running away with everything, and then you got Kyrie, and so now you're like, okay, can I get to Jokic's value with my 1st and 2nd round pick? Okay, if you go Halliburton in the 1st or James Harden in the 1st or something like that, someone that you feel is a very safe play, and you go I guess it would have been like Sabonis. Is he the guy that you would considered probably the safest second round pick? Put those guys together. Does it get you there? Not all the way, but it gets you damn close. And you're like, Dan, does that mean that the guy who has Jokic has to screw up a pick? Probably. Because if they go and they make 3 good picks in a row to start their league, you might not be able to catch them. Let's see the teams that had Jokic in some of my leagues here. Let's see. Jokic went, I'm assuming he went second. Yeah. Okay. So who else did Jokic get? Oh, so this guy got Jokic, Scotty Barnes, and De'Aaron Fox. So how did I catch him? Well, Scotty Barnes, badly, injured a lot and not that good this year. 65 games at sort of a 6th round value. I think that put him about 6th round value, actually. And then De'Aaron Fox got traded. He was due for a little bit of a down year, missed 20 games. He was a 5th round value. So this team got Jokic, who was, runaway number 1 or number 2, and then not a whole lot beyond that. And that's how you catch them. Because they're not all going to be perfect. And those aren't I wouldn't call those idiotic picks. I wouldn't have gone Scotty Barnes because it felt like last year was a big mirage. But De'Aaron Fox in the 3rd round felt like a relatively safe play. Not my favorite, but a relatively safe one. Nope. So that's another. You can try to play it as safe as you want, but it's not always going to work out well. Just try not to doink your draft on the head-to-head side in the first 6 or 7, I call it 7 rounds, and roto the first 3 or 4. And I think that probably about cinches up the lesson of the day, which is started with the first round is the most important thing you're going to do in your draft. But really, more than anything, play it safer. I always get suckered into some, and part of that is because I can do 10 leagues where I was like, all right, 1 league, I'm going to take a Joel Embiid shot because this is like the throwaway. If he hits, I'm going to win this league. If he doesn't, I got no shot. But I didn't want to do that in a bunch of leagues, so I did it in 1. But think about the other ones where I did something dumb. I did Larry Markkinen in the 3rd, even though I specifically said I don't want anything to do with this guy. Remember we talked about that yesterday? The losing league? Some of the other ones were just way too many injured guys. Luke LaMelo in the 2nd round, 2 injured. LaMelo in the 3rd, okay, take a shot on it. But then once you do that, if you take a shot in the 3rd round in whatever format you're in, you better not take another one for a while. Head-to-head, you better not take another shot until the 9th round. Roto, okay, maybe 6th. But then in that league, if you recall, I think I took a shot in the 2nd. I took a shot in the 4th. I took a shot in the 5th, the 6th. Whoops. Too much risk. So mitigate your risk. Be safe early. Focus on just staying alive with your first-round pick and understand that anything can happen. So you might have gone Wemby, young dude, played in most games last year. That screws you up. Don't take other shots. If you could still have you're probably not going to win your head-to-head league without Wemby because you likely built around his whatever he did. But we already talked about the fact that he was a 2nd rounder even by total. So if you had Wemby and Roto when he went down, if you had 2 to 3 more good picks after him, you very well could still win it or certainly place. We'll have more lessons starting tomorrow. I don't want to go too much beyond 30 to 35 minutes per show. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. This is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball with me, Dan Vespris. And I will see you guys for one more show this week tomorrow, and we'll put that diagonal line through our first 5 bucket of shows and loop about back around to next week, when next week we'll have the debut episodes on our YouTube page, also on their traditional pod feeds of, Balls Deep has been around for a while, Adam King's show on Old Man Squad Network, and Noah Rubin's new show, the Young Man Squad Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Very excited about what's to come. Offseason should be a lot of fun. Those guys are going to be establishing themselves as pod forces here, and I hope you guys will subscribe and make sure you get those. See you tomorrow.